100 shirts for only $395. 20 shirts for only $100.
Greenleaf Printing and Designs has stupendous signage, printed and embroidered apparel, and promotional products for you. They're at 5526 Burkhart Road in Dayton and on the web at greenleafprinting.com.
This is a time for you to ask questions after we give brief statements about Occupy Dayton and our experiences with it.
True democracy is attainable when the process is determined by economic power. We come to you at a time when corporations, which place profit over people, self-interest over justice, and oppression over equality, run our governments. We have peaceably assembled here, as is our right, to let these facts be known.
What did you think about the Occupy teach-in tonight? What's your final thoughts? Kind of just tell me what you think.
It was good. It was a good meeting. I came here because I was interested in what was going on. You know, I didn't completely understand. You know, I saw in the news Occupy Wall Street, all this stuff, but I never really understood like what it was all about and what it was for. And you know, I agree with some of the things they're saying, but you know, I disagree with some of the things at the same time. I think there is a need for change and stuff like that, but to what extent, I'm not sure yet.
Okay, so you're just here kind of learning anything you learned about the Occupy people or movement that you didn't know before?
They have a lot of ideas. They're very ambitious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No. It was a good time. They're good people and stuff, so.
Okay, where you from?
Akron, Ohio.
Say hi to your people.
Hi, Akron.
Attract faculty, attract research, etc. that has distinguished it, right? And students come here with not only the expectation of a good education, but also, as you were talking about, kind of the brand, right? Because it's a selective institution. And that's one of the things Occupy is criticizing, isn't it? That we're kind of in a system where we are very competitive with one another. It's the fact. You know, you're absolutely right that that is what we're dealing with, but we can also talk about what that creates in terms of a two-class society. There are lots of hands up. Now, Lindsay.
The problem here isn't necessarily the corporations and companies, but rather the corporations and the companies' extreme influence over the government and their ability to manipulate whatever government policies are enacted constantly in their favor, thus depriving all of the funds that could either be used for social programs and societal benefit, or could be used to reduce the deficit or whatever, instead directing those funds to corporate greed, as a matter of fact. So wouldn't it make more sense to directly, say, march on Washington, D.C. and directly attack the connections, instead of trying to attack CEOs and trying to accuse the companies? Just try to attack the ties between the government and the companies.
In their natural states, corporations are just going to go where the money is. And the bottom line is the bottom line. And so without regulations, of course, that's the real issue, right? Being able to regulate corporations. And a lot of folks are actually working on what's called Move to Amend. I don't know if any of you have heard about Move to Amend, and it's to amend Citizens United, basically reverse Citizens United so that corporations can't put all the money into the political system. But I think it's much more than simply the connection, and I think that's demonstrated pretty clearly in a lot of the information that Occupy Wall Street is actually making available. But it's a huge.
We're here at the Occupy Teach-In. What brought you out here tonight, and just what are some final thoughts or anything else?
I was just really interested in learning more about the movement, and so that's why I came here tonight, and I definitely accomplished that.
What are you studying here at UD?
English and sustainability.
Okay, so the sustainability part is definitely tied in with Occupy. What did you learn tonight that you didn't know beforehand?
The grievances was something that I was kind of confused about the base foundation for the whole thing, and I learned a lot more about that.
A collection of grievances finally coalesced into a cause. And that cause was the center point which triggered the whole thing, right? Because people were still reluctant to like take it over the line, even after Lexington and all that. But the cause came when it became structural, and you understood that the structure of governance was no longer legitimate. And when monarchy was defined as, this is not a legitimate structure of government. Today, and it's always about, it comes down to the core thing of the few dominating and controlling the many for the benefit of the few. And that's whether it's the age of the pharaohs, monarchy, communism, the church, and the modern global corporation is simply the modern manifestation of that form of governance. It is now the tool to do something that's been happening through eons of time. So it's not, I guess, corporation. It's the fact that the corporation is the structure that's doing this colonization of the modern technological corporate feudalism is what it is. And if it's not rested, if this isn't challenged, it's a dystopia. It is a modern corporate dystopia. And to go after there's some legitimacy to that. But the fact is, do you go for the puppet or do you go for the puppet master? Right? And the government today is simply the puppet. So why talk to the...
I support Occupy Wall Street all for it, but my, I guess, question or comment is like, why now? This isn't something new. Like everything that's happening has been happening for hundreds of years. Like,
the police brutality, and we have a long history of that.
I mean, but all of that, I mean, and not
struggles, yeah.
Right, and then when you have somebody, and then another thing I want to point out is there's never been a bloodless revolution. So we can sit down and, you know, and say, hey, all this stuff is wrong, but at the end of the day, if you really want something to change, there's going to be bloodshed. I mean, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, every revolution that I can personally think of, you know, has been a fight. And somebody wins and somebody loses. So that was like a comment. But then I'm like, you know, and then I think about like the modern day civil rights movement. Every time there's somebody who gets tremendous influence and they go after the economic structure and say there must be a redistribution of wealth or something, they get assassinated. Like, it's like they just get killed. So,
yeah. That's why it's a leaderless movement.
Right.
There's been lots of bloodless voices of protest,
sure,
right, that speak out against injustice. Now, if you're going to start dethroning kings, then you get into more armed conflict. But I think right now we see a movement that's just a very loud voice. And you had
I'm listening to it and I'm hearing that you know, corporations, they're not spending it how we want them to spend it. Well, who are we to tell them how to spend their own money? I hear things like education is a right. Well, what do you mean by that? Does that mean that, you know, we're all entitled to a government handout of education? Or are we just saying that college education is too expensive? What is really being said here?
right.
Say that, especially historically in the last 20 years, at the state level, there have been massive cuts in what the states have given to state schools. Now, private schools are their own thing, but the states have cut a lot of what they were going to spend on education, and because of that, the colleges have had to raise tuition rates exorbitantly. I mean, every year we hear about tuition rates getting higher and higher, and that's because there's just not the funding that they're used to.
No longer pay for, is no longer paying state schools anymore. Well, why is that? Why? Where are they spending all their money?
I grew up in California. I went to the University of California university system. When I was a student there, college tuition cost me about $800 a year. Before that, just 10 years before that, it was $250 a year for Berkeley education and UCLA education, and UC Davis education. Now, just 2 years ago, prison spending has outpaced education spending in California. So we are looking at a distribution of money, as well as the issue of, well, how much money is there? And that's a good point.
If you want to argue that education is not a right, then you could argue against publicly funding high school as well, or publicly funding middle school, or elementary school? Where do you want to draw that line? The reason that high school was where the line was drawn during the early part of the 20th century is because in order to get a decent job that would afford you a living wage, you had to have a high school education. A high school education isn't going to do that for you anymore. So, do we need to make an adjustment to account for that? Or do we want to spend the money on adventurism in Iraq instead? Because that's the other flip side of the coin. The federal government used to give a lot of money to states to pay for these things. They pulled that money back because they needed it for other more pressing concerns.
$40,000 worth of student debt. That is a problem. But I haven't heard a constructive...
Maybe the United States can stay out of, you know, different wars. About all this money, like somebody suggested, that we're spending on prisons for this so-called war on drugs. I mean, the war on drugs. Between 1980, when President Reagan declared the so-called war, there was about maybe 300,000 prisoners at the time. Today it's 2.5 million. And that has been, there's research on it. I mean, Human Rights Watch was the first to come out about this back in the mid-90s. I did a paper on it and said, you know, this crack cocaine versus the powder cocaine is the reason why, and they're largely African-American and Latino men who've been just funneled into America's prison system. I mean, like you said, when you look at what we spend on prisons versus education, why not take that money and spend it on a preschool education all the way up through? Because research shows that if kids starting at preschool get an education, they're less likely to get in trouble, you know, to even do anything to go to prison. I mean, this whole drug thing is an underground economy because people can't get jobs in the first.
The whole idea of paying for an education where somebody can finish an education, go out, receive a job, and bring money back into the system or support themselves, as opposed to locking someone up in a prison where they're doing no work and simply costing the state money for meals, resources, all of those things.
It benefits everyone, for everyone to have good education. It benefits us as a society. You have people with degrees who make better money, who pay more taxes. So, educating a society is a good thing for society.
What'd you think about this Occupy teaching this evening?
I mean, it's been fantastic. I've been trying to follow the Occupy movement as much as I can. I'm from Springboro, Ohio, which is a pretty small conservative town in between Dayton and Cincinnati. So it's sometimes hard to get the type of information. And like coming to a place like this and just being open to people that are experienced with it, and also have a whole bunch of information like all of this, which I've never read the Declaration of Occupation in New York City. But now that I have, I understand a bit more in depth what the movement's for, and it's stuff that I can get with.
Okay. Did you have...
There is something that lies at the center of all of this, and it is corporations, and it is their wholesale takeover of the government, the economic system, the educational system. They are, don't think that they aren't busy trying to corporatize the entire educational system in this country, from kindergarten right up through. They've already made inroads in collegiate education, university education around the country. They own a lot of the research labs. I guess that sounds like I consider them the evil guys. I guess they're following their instincts to control the environment, to increase their profits. So I don't mean that they want to destroy the world, but I think in some ways they will do just that. If left to their own devices, the way that most of us would left to our own devices. If we had everything.
Okay, I'm here with Joe Moore. Sure. You're a student at Sinclair. What are you studying at Sinclair?
English.
Okay. And getting back to what I was saying, what brought you out tonight? What'd you learn? What'd you think about the whole thing?
My girlfriend actually told me about it. She's over there. She's a UD student, and she just told me to come over here, so I did.
Okay. What did you learn tonight that you didn't know before, or what did you think about this?
I really liked the web. I liked focusing on the web. I hadn't seen anything about that. I liked that they really did give everybody a voice. Like, they, I thought it was well orchestrated. It wasn't just looking over at the organization, but I thought that everybody was given a nice structure, and there was no shout.
Delivery Kings will deliver anything from the menus of McDonald's, KFC, Taco Bell, and other local restaurants. It will also deliver anything and everything from Walgreens, Family Dollar, corner stores, and others. Anything a customer needs, Delivery Kings will bring.